to Marriage and Money, a conversational podcast about personal financial topics aimed at improving conversations about your money in your marriage so you can reach your dreams together. This is a weekly discussion brought to you by a seemingly financially incompatible couple bonded by the legal contract of marriage. My name is David, your favorite saver, and I'm joined today by the very definition of fun, Heather.
Aw, that's so sweet. Only when I'm around you.
Aw.
We'd love to hear from you. Please send us your questions or comments. You can email us at marriageandmoneypodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at marriage.and.money.
Well, we have a fantastic show planned for you today. Today we are going to be talking about a very fun topic, discretionary spending, otherwise sometimes known as fun money.
Yeah, it's fun money. What money isn't fun? I think if you have money, it's fun.
Well, it depends on what you're able to spend that money on, right? I don't know. I don't know
Oh,
that
spend. That's
paying the
nice that you
utility
said
bill is
fun
very
is
fun, but
nice that you said fun and spending, not fun
well,
and saving.
I'm not too big of a saver to admit that spending money can be fun sometimes. It's just not my first preference necessarily. But the topic, let's talk a little bit about fun money or discretionary spending. So, why is it important that we talk about discretionary spending today?
Yeah, I think it is a fun topic, but I do think this is an area that can cause a lot of disagreements in couples. I do think this is an area where people aren't going to necessarily agree and there could be some arguments. So we thought this would be a good topic, to cover with this, since that's what we're trying to help people with through these conversations that are a little bit more challenging. And I think people are going to disagree, right, on two things. The what, like the fun money, like what are you doing with it?
Hmm.
And I said doing. I didn't say spending. So what are you
I
doing
like
with
that
that
distinction.
money? And how much, right? So how would you define how much of your money is discretionary and how whatever. So or and what you're doing with it. So
Yeah, and disagreements on what you do with it and how much you allocate for it can be very contentious. Like that can create major fights, like any other topic in money, right? If you depending on what you're investing in or what you're buying next, or e- even lining up what services essentials you need in the house can cause fights. And so certainly spending money where you have flexibility is something that's going to cause fights as well.
yeah. And I think if your finances are separate, so we had a episode on this a while ago about how couples do their finances. Some keep their finances separate. I think this is less of an issue. I don't know that it's not an issue, but I think it's less of an issue because your money is separate. So you already have discretionary money. So I think this is more of an issue if you're combining your finances or you have a hybrid approach in your marriage to your
And
finances.
in the conversations I've had with a few couples, I've found that the discretionary spending is the thing, probably the primary driver why couples oftentimes separate their finances in what I would call normal situations, non-second marriage situations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because you know the main stuff you have to pay for, so that's not where the fighting is. I mean, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your utilities, you have to buy groceries, right?
Exactly. Everybody needs those. You're not going to argue very much about them.
Right, but it's the okay, what do you do with the discretionary? How do you want to use that money? That's where a lot of the disagreements can come in.
Right. So if you're able to get past this discussion, this is a way that you're able to bring your finances together potentially where maybe you haven't in the past. So what exactly does discretionary mean when we talk about discretionary? When we talk about fund money, um, what does that mean, and where does that come from? And at least how I see it, is I see this discretionary money is the money left when all of the essentials, all the necessities are paid for. It's the very, very last bottom priority on your priority list. After you meet bills, other needs, debt payments, savings contributions that for your savings goals, charitable contributions, everything else has to be taken care of, and then you have discretionary money left at the end.
I would agree with you, but I think there can still be some disagreements on again what are all of those necessities. So is going to get a Starbucks coffee, is that a
Well, it most
necessity?
certainly is not.
And that's what I'm saying. Some
Do
people
you need a
might
Starbucks
see.
coffee to survive? Like,
I'm just,
will you fall over dead without it?
some people would probably say yes. So I'm just saying that that's, I think, again, where some of the there could be a little bit of disagreement on
Okay.
where that line is.
So some of us have realistic views of necessities, you're saying, and others like to bend the rules on what a necessity is. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, no, that's true.
And
So,
I think the other point to say on defining discretionary, and this is a lot coming for me, is it doesn't necessarily mean spending.
ooh, I like
So
that.
there's this money left over, and I think naturally we think that, oh, this is fun. Like I just mentioned, you can spend it on Starbucks or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's money that's being spent. It could be saved or going towards a larger goal.
Right. It could be repurposed. It could be put towards, like you said, towards a larger goal, towards other activities. And I also think one thing that's just generally thought of when we hear discretionary spending, we hear, oh, this is money that I just get to blow. It's discretionary. It's going out the door. It's whatever I want to do. I don't have to think about it because it's discretionary. And I would like to remind you that in the core of discretionary is discretion or discernment, right? So that is part of what discretionary is. And so you need to use your wisdom in order to decide what's best to do with it. You need to be wise with all of your money, and discretionary money has that wisdom component built right into what we call it. So don't forget about that. Remember to be wise with all your money, and discretionary money is no different. Perhaps it's especially is where you need to be wise, because
Right.
that's where you actually have flexibility, and where you have flexibility is where you need to be wisest with your money.
Right. You have to make a decision, right? There's a decision there to be made of what to do
Yes,
with it.
right.
So I think we've done a good job clarifying what it is, what we're talking about. So how should couples have conversations around this topic?
Where I always like to start, and you've probably heard this as a theme throughout a lot of our discussions around money, is I like to start by framing money discussions around goals. And this is why, when we talked about it in the past, why it's so important to have goals as a couple. Goals on how do we want our standard of living to look like? How do we want our future to look like? Just in general, what are our retirement goals? What are our goals for family, for charitable contributions? What do we want to? What does our life look like? And framing your discretionary spending against those goals gives you some guideposts to know, are we on the right track, and are we doing the right thing with our discretionary spending? And so it could be, um, there could be a lot of things that fit into that. There could be, maybe it's from a standard of living standpoint, it could be that cup of coffee you were talking about, Heather. Or maybe for me, I might want a new video game or a new toy that I want to play with. And so it's all about balancing those things against these other goals in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point is to really focus first on where you're going, where you're headed, and then you can adjust because it could be adjusting your standard of living, it could be a lot of things, which is I think why conflicts come up around this topic. And I think it's a good idea to start with what you agree on.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you guys see eye to eye on, and then talk about your differences and listen, have room for both people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a one for one. It doesn't need to be a complete
Like dollar for dollar
dollar for
match.
dollar match. But you just need to hear each other out, and it needs to feel that you're being heard and respected, and that you can make. It needs to feel fair, whether it's truly fair is being split with what each individual wants to do with it. But I think it's good to start. Where do you agree, and then from there
And I
deal with how you
like the
disagree.
your point around starting where you agree, because odds are you agree on a lot of things. It may not feel like you agree on most, but most likely you're married, you probably have a lot of things you agree on just in order to be married in the first place. And so reminding yourselves on where you agree is a awesome place to start from and a great place to build upon. Additionally, I think your conversations should be around balancing priorities. We want to make sure that we work out, what is the timing of our priorities. So we have personal priorities, we have couple priorities, and as you're having this conversation, make sure this is a conversation that balances those priorities in the appropriate order, and it's not a conversation about no, we can't do this. We're not doing this no matter what. Maybe it's a conversation around that's a great idea. I want to support you in what you want. This right now might not be the right time, but when is? And it's not. There needs to be time frames around that, or indicators to say, or milestones to say, here are the steps we're taking to work towards you getting your priority, your discretionary spend, and me getting mine, so that there's some agreement and some conversation around it, right?
Yeah, I think that's really good because it's not necessarily a no, it's a not now,
Right. We don't want to
right?
shut down conversation because when you say no, you shut down conversation.
Right. And so maybe this year it's like, oh, I want to buy something for the garage, for the car to work on. You would say that, right? And
Sure.
so
Oh, yeah, I have said that.
so that's probably not something I want, but it's not part of our budget, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, so we're gonna save for that for 6 months, and the discretionary can go to get you that, and then the thing that I wanted maybe is later. And so it's again, it's not necessarily no, it's taking maybe turns to work towards something that one of the individuals wants and the other one doesn't really, but yeah, it's
But
just delaying
that's
it.
marriage, right?
Right.
Marriage is valuing priorities of the other person, oftentimes above your own. Usually, if you're doing marriage right, you should always be valuing the priorities of the other person above your own. And if both people are doing that, then everybody's priorities are being validated and supported.
And it
And
oh,
yeah,
go ahead. I
go
mean, if
please.
you flat out just disagree, like I can't believe that's what you want to spend money on, our recommendation is that, and we'll kind of get into options on how to handle this, but one recommendation is to give each other just kind of a pool, not a pool, but a set amount of money and
Maybe a
just
pile. Would you
a
say a
pile
pile of
or
money would be
several
appropriate?
piles. I like to measure our money in piles.
I haven't figured out yet how much a pile of money is. Is that like $5 is a pile? Is it $100 that's a pile? What is the pile? I,
It's not completely clear.
okay.
It's just a fun measurement, but give each individual money, and then you don't have to ask permission on what you do with that. If that person wants to spend it on a Starbucks coffee every day, which is often, or eating out, which is often where a lot of my fun money goes, that David doesn't care. He doesn't get a say. He doesn't have, I don't have to ask permission. It's my little set of money to do what I want. And so you don't have to agree. You don't have to like what they're doing. You just know, like, each of you have this money that you can do with you want. So you've agreed to the amount that you're allowed to, but you don't need to ask what you're going to use that for.
Right. Yeah. Then you have a little bit more flexibility that way, and to a certain extent, that's like a mini hybrid model, like we were talking about, right? Where we the accounts are all combined in this case, with the exception of this little bit of fun money or discretionary money. So that you mentioned we would get into some solutions to handle this. So why don't we just jump into that then? So you had mentioned this option where a set amount is defined each month to talk about it. So I thought that was a great idea. Another option,
And before we move on,
yeah,
I mean, this is something we've done, right?
true,
So this is something we started when we started budgeting. And we set aside, I think originally we started with $100 a month,
yep,
just to give people some context. And we each got our $100. We got it out in cash, and we'd each get our $100 of cash. And there There was no questions. And sometimes you'd order something online, so it
And
didn't have to be cash. But it was kind of here's your $100 for the month, and each got it. And
and the way we did it was we also said that $100 needed to be spent within the month or it was returned to the family. So we basically topped off the $100 every month, and it didn't carry over. And we did that for a long time.
yep,
And then we said, oh well, let's try carryover for a little bit as well. So the reason, first of all, the reason that we had the non carryover scenario was because we wanted to encourage conversation about large purchases. And so yeah, and
right. So by carrying it over, you could save up $1,200 for something, and it was my point was like, let's talk about that and be sourcing that maybe from the family versus having to save up to buy a large purchase. This money was just meant to literally be some extra little,
walking around kind of money.
yeah, walking around money. You go to the dime store and get your soda or whatever back in the day. So it was, or pick up a magazine or whatever. It was meant to be just for
People buy
little.
magazines.
It's like incidentals, like when you travel for work, they
Yeah,
used to get an incidental budget,
right,
right? So
right.
that's what it was meant to be, which is why we didn't have the carryover.
Yeah, and, and
Um,
and then we transitioned to a carryover, and I don't even remember now what the reasoning was for the carryover, but we tried that for, I don't know,
yeah.
a year and a half or so, and I don't know, it was fine.
Right. But even in that the first way, each month, each year we would revisit kind of our goals and what we, again, to your point, what are our goals? And at one point we were like, hey, we want to increase our lifestyle. I think we had paid off the house or something and we had a little
Right.
bit more money than we had had previously. And so we increased that. I think we went up to like 150 or $200 or whatever. And so that was a decision we made to kind of increase, our lifestyle by increasing that, discretionary or yeah, blow money.
Exactly. And then we bought a house. We bought another house after paying off that one, and then we decreased that discretionary money.
And right now we don't even do it at all.
And now in Singapore we don't do it at all, mainly because just because everything's harder. Everything's harder in Singapore. We can't really buy stuff. It's
Well, we
hard.
don't want to buy stuff
We don't really
because
want
we're
to buy
eventually
stuff
moving
there.
back and we can't move it all
So
back.
yeah, I would love to have some discretionary spending money, but it doesn't make sense in Singapore, and so yeah, we're not doing it at all. But looking forward to coming back and having a little discretionary money at some time again.
Yeah. So another option, and this is more, I think, what we were doing, so we were kind of doing both, is really to talk about the items, like I had mentioned, and build it into the budget. So if you come to the end of the month and you've got this discretionary, like I said, maybe maybe David wants a part for the
Oh, but
DeLorean.
those parts are so cheap that we
Oh
can
my
just pull those out
goodness.
of the pocket change we find in between the cushions of the couch, right?
Right. Or like maybe I want a new purse that costs a little bit more money.
A
So
little bit, huh? It's amazing how much they charge for a little fabric just stitched together with the logo stapled on.
stapled
Well,
on.
isn't that
It's
how
high
they do it?
quality. It's quality. So what we would do is talk about it and say, hey, this month, let's put the money towards something David wants. Let's put the money towards something Heather wants. And so, um, again, this is where you kind of have to have a more of a discussion and agreement on it, but each person can kind of take their turn at getting what they want.
Hmm.
Like some months, so it would just vary the month. Like sometimes I have a girls' weekend. I have an annual girls' trip with my book club. So instead of having to, save my $100 a month, we would talk about, hey, I've got girls' weekend coming up. I'm gonna have expenses for eating out, for staying in a hotel, etc. And we would
But the
plan for
booze
that.
budget for Girls Weekend seems to, for whatever reason, be the highest. I'm not sure how that happened.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But yes, yeah, we have those conversations around different activities or items that are coming up, and yeah, just making sure that we work it into the schedule. But now, a lot of people out there are they're paycheck to paycheck, and they're not really sure how they make that discretionary spending happen. So what would your advice be, Heather, if you don't seem to have if you're anything left at the end of the month? If you go through your necessities and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing left at the end of the month, but I still really need to get that coffee, or I still really need to get whatever that need is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't have the money, you can't get it, right? So I think you need to go back to your budget and you need to look if hey, I really want to get a Starbucks, then where can you pull it? Can
Oh,
you
so now Starbucks went from a need to a want. You just used the word want. Okay, I'm glad there's some realization here. There's some learning here happening live on the podcast.
Uh-oh. Kind of backing myself into a corner here. I need to think of a different example of discretionary spend. That's the problem. I think most everything I spend money on is not discretionary. It's a need,
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
want.
I totally agree with you. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'd like to interject a little funny comment in there, but you're completely right. Like I think that's where you have to get very aggressive on what is truly discretionary, and at that point you have either an expense issue or an income issue, and you can solve that on both sides at the same time.
Right, exactly.
And continue to work on improving your career situation and continue to be aggressive on cutting out expenses wherever you can in order to make more room.
And for us, I mean, this really was after we had paid off our debt.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
mean, if you're really trying to get out of debt, and we really encourage you to do so, like you should be throwing everything at that. So that's not the time to be, buying DeLorean parts or
Correct.
purses or anything. It's like that'll come, and it'll come quicker. The quicker you get out of debt, even the more money you're going to have after that.
Yeah, when we
So,
were in the process of getting out of debt, we weren't really eating out. We weren't buying fancy car parts. We weren't buying fancy purses. We weren't buying $5 coffees. We weren't doing any of that stuff.
and I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a horrible life. And what we were talking about is there are things you can do for fun that don't cost money. So if you're thinking, oh man, that life sounds horrible, I mean, there are ways to treat yourself and still have fun. Taking a picnic to the park or doing a hike outside. I mean, there's things you can do that are fun and can be a treat to yourself that don't have to cost money. So you have to maybe think of creative ways while you're in that place. Or to your point, if you get to the end of the month and there's not, it's like
It,
how do you do something
it's
that you
winter
can?
here in Minnesota, and um, we in there's plenty of fun things to do. You go snowshoeing, you can go sledding, you you can get out, go ice skating. A lot of these things, most all these things, you can find places to do for free.
Right. You don't need a $500 gaming system. You can
Well,
do all of these fun outside activities.
that's true. No, you're right. You're right. I don't need the gaming system. It's definitely a discretionary spend. I'm just glad that we're at a point now in life where I can discretionarily spend $500 on a gaming system. That's fun too.
How much time did you have to think through and decide that that was the right decision with your
I
wisdom?
okay, my all
How
right.
much wisdom was put on that one?
Well, there wasn't a lot of time spent when the moment came, but it was something that I'd been thinking about for many years actually. I'm already thinking about the next one. No. All right.
Okay, so hopefully this will be a fun conversation for you and your spouse to have. We want you to continue this conversation. So, talk about what you would ideally do with your discretionary income. And it's okay if your spouse doesn't approve of it. Have that conversation so you can understand what each of you value. You may not even know what that person values. And then have the conversation, obviously, about how to handle discretionary income. So, David, I think we can handle the same question. I mean, we've tipped our hand a little bit on kind of where our discretionary income,
We have.
but
We have.
if you had some discretionary money this month, what would you do with it?
Oh,
I said do, not spend.
sure. Well, and I appreciate differentiating it like that. And I also want to call out that I think this is a great place to start the conversation because it gets us on the same page of understanding each other. What we're really doing here is understanding each other. We're not necessarily even making decisions about what we are going to do with discretionary spend. And so just that common understanding of who each other are, I think, is really valuable. So what would I do with it? So we've already talked. I mean, the main thing is right now with the new Xbox and PlayStation coming out. Like I'm excited about getting a new Xbox, and so I really want to. And as we've said, I've ordered it. So so I guess going to that or to an accessory. So like a new controller. There's a fancy controller for it that I think would be really awesome if I had some discretionary spending. That would be fantastic to do.
I thought you were going to say LED lights for the bedroom.
Whoa, ooh la la. Whoa. So
Well,
lighting, so
my
the lighting is
David
also,
just helped my nephew install some LED lights in his bedroom, and
and
he was having a little jealousy
I
over
got
it.
I got excited. So there are a lot of LED light projects. I love accent lighting, and I could put accent lighting just about everywhere in the house. The problem is where is it gaudy and too much, and where is it classy and it just accentuates as it should.
And which one are you? Are you gaudy or are you classy?
I'm more gaudy, but so I need someone like you to reel me in a little bit there. But yes, LED lights for sure everywhere. Let's put them everywhere. Where would you go with your discretionary spending?
Again, you said spending. So
Or
first,
what would you do? What would you
I
do?
would invest in
Oh
some
yeah,
mutual
right.
funds in the
Yeah,
S&P
I'm sure
500.
you would.
That's exactly where I would start. And then if there was some left over from the earnings on that,
Oh my goodness.
I'm just
I don't
kidding.
buy a word of this.
Well, it's kind of hard right now because if we were back in Minnesota, I would want to do some things around the house, maybe some new furniture or decorations, kind of work on. I love little things for the house. That would be fun. But we're not here right now, so that kind of seems like a waste.
Hmm.
So in Singapore, I would like to maybe start going out to some nicer restaurants. I mean, we try to go out to eat a little bit,
I
but
feel like we've been to some pretty nice restaurants. We went to a restaurant on the 33rd floor overlooking the city,
it was beautiful. But that was for my birthday.
and we went to a
Wouldn't it be nice to do
restaurant.
that more
We
often?
went to a restaurant that was in a cable car going from island to
And
island.
that was for our anniversary. But
Oh.
wouldn't it be nice just to like do that on a Tuesday instead of just for special occasions?
Got it. Okay, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, but what would make the anniversary special if we were to do that?
Well, you're doing something even better.
Wow,
Life,
you dream big.
lifestyle creep. Warning.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the creep. Oh, good. Well, I think that about wraps up our conversation for today. And thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear how your conversations about money have gone or to take a question from you on a future episode. Please reach out and email us at marriageandmoneypodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at marriage.and.money. Also, please rate and review us on iTunes as that will continue to help us reach more people. Thanks again for joining us this week, and remember that whether you're a spender or a saver, your best financial life lies somewhere ahead.